But first, the post-election fallout is continuing to plague some of America's biggest news brands. Forbes reports MSNBC and CNN ratings slashed in half post-election. MSNBC's primetime audience has dipped 53% since the week before the election. According to new Nielsen ratings data, a steep drop-off for the left-of-centre network, rivaled by a 47% drop by CNN, while Fox News has largely held onto its audience since the President-elect Donald Trump's victory. Now, this is a significant exodus, and many so-called media experts are puzzled about what is driving this phenomenon. Not us here, though, because we watched some of MSNBC's Thanksgiving coverage.
You right-wingers shouldn't have to suffer the consequences of your votes. You don't want to be around me because I voted for fascism. No fair. I'm coughing on you with COVID, but you want me to wear a mask for your safety? No fair. My body, my choice. Well, here's an alternative thought. Make your own dinner, MAGA. Make your own sandwiches. Wipe your own tears. Troll amongst yourselves with Elon and leave us alone.
Well, that's MSNBC primetime host Joy Reid making the argument that families should not come together this holiday season. Politics above all, it seems.
If you expect the 73 million who voted for the prosecutor, not the felon, and particularly the 92% of black women who voted for Kamala to give you a cookie for your vote, a trophy, a hug, a high five, you might be asking too much. If we want to eat with you, we will. But if we just want some peace over the holidays and we don't want to put up with your trolling while we eat our tofurkey, get over it.
Well, joining me this week to discuss this and much more is Sky News contributor James Bolt and Radio 2CC breakfast host Stephen Cenatiempo. But James, let's start with you. I mean, the audiences are absolutely fleeing this network. Is it maybe because of some of the negativity that they're putting to air?
I can see it that way. I remember on the first show after the election, I said, I think the viewers are going to come back. And I've been proved so spectacularly wrong. I've had to do some research to try and see if I can still be right. I did see in 2020, there was a 36% downfall for CNN and 50% in primetime for CNN and MSNBC in primetime immediately after the election. So maybe there's just a bit of like post-election people on watching, and I think also the left is largely in mourning at the re-emergence of Donald Trump, and they don't want to hear that negativity in their lives night after night. I think once he gets into power, I think they'll come back.
Yeah, Stephen, so much for unity, which the left is always so big on. Now it just appears to be temper tantrums, and if you have a family member that you might have a political disagreement with, well, we're not going to eat with you this Thanksgiving.
I find it, well, hang on. I think you guys are reading too much into this. I think Joy Reid belled the cat when she said they're eating tofurkey. That's why they're not watching television. They're all too weak to turn the TV on because they're not eating real turkey. But look, I have a cousin who is a Greens voter, and we have a great time at Christmas time over the dinner table arguing about politics. But you know what? At the end of the day, you eat dessert and you're happy and you move on. I don't know what it is with these people that just can't get past losing their side losing an election. I mean, it's just absolutely extraordinary. There are people in this building who do actually like each other on either side of the aisle. Not many, but there are a few. So it can actually be done. I mean, it just proves you're a well-rounded human being if you can sit down and actually enjoy the company of somebody that doesn't necessarily agree with you. But that spray from Joy Reid was absolutely extraordinary. Look, I got to say it doesn't surprise me because, I mean, they went all in during the campaign, so I guess they had to respond in the way they have, but it is quite unhinged, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
To the Joy Reid thing, I just did want to play this one excerpt from the rant that I just cannot believe went where, if we have the clip.
Stop acting like we owe you, and for God's sakes, stop whining. It's embarrassing.
I hope no one thinks she's whining. I hope no one puts in the paper that she's mad. I hope everyone knows that it's actually the Republicans that are whining. But to Stephen's point, I think it comes down to that 1960s theory, which is now so widespread in left-wing circles, which is the personal is political. Everything is politics. Everything is a power imbalance. Everything needs to be fought. Thanksgiving dinner table is now a battlefield. Normal people aren't like this. Normal people, as Stephen says, can get on with people that disagree with them because there's things to talk about within the family. There's sports to talk about. It's a really sad existence if you go into family relatives gatherings going, this is a war, I need to win it this week.
It's their new religion, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's almost like they've been denied their religion. And that's where a lot of the anger comes from. But look, let's move on though, because one man thinks he knows what is leading to all of this holiday negativity this season. Joe Biden, leader of the free world, took time at a press conference in Nantucket to explain to the media why no one was watching them.
You turn on the television, you don't see a lot of good news. Even the stuff that is good news doesn't seem to sell very well. And so you turn on the TV, everything looks bad. Everything looks bad. And now you have, I forget what the number is, but an exceedingly small number of people watching mainstream television and reading the newspaper.
MSNBC, recruit that man, because the news should cheer you up. It isn't as if we always focus on the negative, but let's check in on what's going on in the UK to see what's making headlines. Wanted, jolly people to help plug France's Father Christmas shortage. The Telegraph reports that rude children and long hours are causing a Father Christmas shortage in France as men increasingly refuse to take on the jolly white bearded role. The paper reports that one Santa quit the job because he was urinated on by a child while posing for photos, and then two families ended up brawling while queuing for presents. Stephen, let's bring you in. Joe Biden, is he right? Are we too negative? Are these the type of stories which dominate the news cycle? Are we turning people off ourselves?
Well, maybe if he'd been a better president, there would have been more good news to report on. Who knows? But look, there's always been this disaster porn aspect to the news. We do tend to focus on the negative a little bit. I mean, look, I'd have nothing to talk about if the Muppets in this building were better at their jobs. But look, sour grapes on both sides. Like, Joe is upset that he didn't get to go to the election. I mean, I'm not sure he realises the election's been run and won yet, but maybe he's onto something. Who knows?
Yeah, I actually quite liked the Joe Biden rant there because he's saying there in front of the media, the mainstream media, and he looks them in the eyes and says, well, no one's watching you guys anymore.
Which would be satisfying. First off, that guy turned down a job where he got to watch people have brawls in front of him between families. I'd do it for free. But to Joe Biden's point, I think he's putting the horse before the cart. He's saying if the media isn't saying enough nice things, if the media started saying more nice things, then people would think the world is a better place. I just think that's got it the wrong way around in that it's the same thought process behind the misinformation bill or the idea that, like, why can't people see the economy is good when they can't afford things? The idea that the media is so powerful that it can just dictate to people what's reality and they're just going to swallow it wholesale and ignore what they can see and touch. People have more agency than that, and that is why people aren't watching those mainstream media outlets in the US. It's because they want to be informed by things, by organisations that see the world like them and see the same reality they do. And for us in the media, we don't have that platform of this is now what you think, like believe this now. We have to compete for eyeballs, and I'm not saying that we make things up or we say things we don't believe in, but everything we do has to be informative, insightful, or entertaining, or we're not going to be able to keep the lights on. And I think Biden acknowledges this in the clip when he says, I'm not blaming the media, clearly because, yeah, you guys, you've been on my side since day one. I'm not saying you guys are the problem, but people are going into negative outlets and no one's watching you, because he acknowledges that people are tuning out of actually things are good when they don't feel it's good, and they're going to the people that see the world like they believe.
Well, this week, the head of one of Australia's largest media organisations started a fight with the world's most successful podcaster, Joe Rogan.
I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all of the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society, and they entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive.
Kim Williams, a man who always considers himself to be the smartest person in the room, humiliated himself and our country. He starts off minimising his knowledge of Joe Rogan before suddenly becoming an expert on Rogan, finding the confidence to hurl inflammatory and blatantly false criticisms towards the man. How can you hold such strong opinions of someone you haven't spent the time listening to? Now, the backlash was swift, making headlines around the world, and soon Rogan and billionaire Elon Musk were laughing at Williams. That is the moment Williams should have taken the loss on the chin, but this story gets weirder still. Even though Williams started all of this, used highly inappropriate language for a media executive running a major taxpayer-funded institution, in his mind, he was the victim. Does it get any more ABC than this?
Where is this super sensitivity deriving from? You make a comment in response to a legitimate question from a journalist. You answer it concisely and give an honest answer in terms of what your own perception of Mr. Joe Rogan is. And suddenly I get this huge pile-on from people in the most aggressive way, saying that I have a warped outlook on the world, that I am an embarrassment to our nation, that I am in some way unhinged, that I am a supreme example of arrogance and disconnection with Australian society, and all manner of things. I have to say to you, Raf, I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Do you think they've got glass jaws?
I really don't understand. I do think they've got glass jaws. I don't think they've got glass jaws. I think they've got glass corpus in toto. I mean, their whole body is made of glass. How can people react in such a frankly, demonic fashion? I really stand back in disbelief.
Classic ABC, willing to lob the most outrageous grenades into the public, and then it's all tears and pulling the victim card when the public sentiment turns against them. Now, Williams is not fit to chair the ABC if he thinks a person having conversations on the internet is deeply repulsive. Anyone who has listened to a handful of Rogan podcasts knows he's a reasonable person driven by curiosity. He doesn't proclaim to be an expert on anything other than maybe mixed martial arts. And that is what the ABC is missing. It has no curiosity about any opinion or perspective outside the orthodoxy, and yet it wants to be the expert on everything. So just remember, Williams has told us exactly who he is and what he thinks of you. If you stray from the orthodoxy, you repulse people like Williams and all of those journalists who failed to call him out. James, let's bring you in. What did you make of this whole saga?
So first off, I was just happened to be listening to the Joe Rogan podcast on the drive in, and it was Joe and 3 other comedians debating which bathroom smells the worst. So I didn't feel my insecurities manipulated. I didn't feel my fears exploited for
It wasn't
financial
malevolent?
gain. No, it wasn't malevolent. I didn't feel the need to reinvestigate the 2020 election based off what I heard. It was just a podcast. But to me, the other reason Kim Williams has really exposed himself as unable to fit the ABC is that the ABC podcasting department gets 3 million downloads monthly. Clearly, it's a big thing for them to be in the podcast space and develop on the podcast platform. And the head of the ABC can't bring himself to listen to a single episode of the world's most successful podcast just to figure out what's working in that guy's podcast, what can we learn from it. It is that approach to ABC which is so typical of them, of the money's guaranteed either way. We don't have to compete for viewers. We don't have to compete for advertising dollars. We get money for the government.
It's the viewers who are wrong.
Yeah, the
it's
viewers
their
are wrong.
behaviours that are wrong.
We're doing the good stuff, so we don't need to try harder. We're doing the stuff we can be proud of, and it gets us popular at dinner parties. We don't need to take any lessons from successful organisations here or overseas. And we can look down our noses at them because we just think, whatever the public is eating and whatever the public are watching can't be good for them.
Stephen, let's bring you in. What are your thoughts?
Master strategist, because nobody's talking about the fact that he asked for more than $1.1 billion a year. He's getting over $1 billion to run this shambles as the ABC. He asked for more, and no one's talking about that. We're talking about Joe Rogan. But, I mean, fair dinkum, he goes out and calls this bloke repulsive and then gets upset when people call him names back. The most disappointing thing is, remember this bloke was supposed to be the hope for the side when he came in as the ABC chair? Well, he's been corrupted by the groupthink already. I just find it extraordinary that he's made this huge tirade about something he's never ever seen, and if he thinks that that Joe Rogan's repulsive now and manipulating the a generation of youth. Imagine what he would have thought if he had seen Joe Rogan back in the Man Show days. Goodness me.
Yeah, it's all very cringe, and I think it really let our country down.